Hello and welcome to Visiting Dugout, a Fans First Sports Network production. I'm Crystal O'Keefe. Today I have Sara Sanchez, most notably from Bleed Cubbie Blue, our sister site in Chicago, back to chat about the very first Crosstown series. So Sara, it's been a while. You might just quickly reintroduce yourself for those who might not know you.
Yeah, hi, Sara Sanchez. My Cubs writing is over at Bleed Cubbie Blue over on SB Nation. I also do some fantasy baseball stuff at Baseball HQ. So, you probably know me for one of those two things, at BCB_ on Sara, everywhere there is social media, except for Blue Sky, where there are not underscores, and I'm at BCB Sara there.
Yes, the one time I finally don't have to have my underscores for Blue Sky. I was very bitter about that on Twitter.
I feel like I had a brand, and now they're tweaking the brand.
Yeah, well, I just liked at Crystal OK, so I'm relieved that Blue Sky lets me finally have that. Somebody stole it seriously right before I got married. And then the account was suspended, and I was like, who hates me?
That is the worst.
So anyway, so the Cubs are, doing pretty good this season. What's new on the north side?
I mean, we have this guy, Kyle Tucker. He's very good at baseball, like exceptionally good at baseball. So the big question over here is whether the Cubs will pay the money that it costs to keep a player like Kyle Tucker on your squad. And that is an open question. They've never paid any player the type of deal that it's going to take to land a Kyle Tucker, but he has transformed this lineup. They are one of the most dangerous offenses in baseball, and sort of wildly and maybe unexpectedly, he by WAR, Kyle Tucker is the second best Cub this season, because we also have this guy, Pete Crow Armstrong, who has decided to both go off as a hitter and go off as a center fielder and steal all the bases, which is a lot of fun. It's a fun offense.
Yeah, he is, as much as I hate to admit it, he is absolutely fun and insane to watch. So very happy for my Cubs friends.
I don't know if I'm happy or not. I mean, I think we're going to have a bunch of angst at the end of the season, but I will say it's fun to watch right now. I was at last night's game, which was Mexican Heritage Jersey night. So all of the Latinos were there. It was a lot of fun. I've never seen them do this, but this was super cool. They had so many people in the neighborhood ready to get their jerseys that they opened Gallagher Way at 2:00 for a 6:40 start and sent out a note to people that they expected huge crowds in lines. So go there anytime between 2 and 5.
That is wild. Right. That is like record store day planning for something exclusive. That's fun, though. I'm glad.
Honestly, the last time I saw something like that happen, and maybe this should be a lesson to the Cubs brass, was Javier Baez bobblehead day. So, get the Latinos out there and we will show up. The jersey is great if you haven't seen it. It was designed by a Mexican-American artist out in Pilsen, and it's, the green of the Mexican flag with the red and the white. They redid the Cubs logo in the Mexican flag colors. It's got the butterflies and some roses. It's got like a little cartoon Mexicano guy on one sleeve, a Mexican flag on the other. It's a really well done jersey. I'm very glad I got one. I might just wear it all the time.
One thing about this city, both teams do it. Both teams really just knock those jerseys out of the park for Heritage Nights. So I'm glad that it was such a hit. And I can't remember off the top of my head what it looks like, but I've seen the jersey for the White Sox. And again, the White Sox kind of killed it with their giveaways this year. I mean, you've got to get people in the park, so might as well do it. And I mean, they've obviously had like the World Series anniversary, so a lot of it is kind of 2005 related, but all the Heritage Night giveaways are really top notch. So good on them.
Yeah, the White Sox usually have, I'm just going to say it. I think I can say this as a Cubs fan. The White Sox usually have better jersey giveaways than the Cubs, and they often do a better job because they have like different sizes and they do more of them. They do like 25,000 instead of the 10,000 that the Cubs try to get you in so that you'll drink all their beer at ridiculous prices. So they only do 10,000 so they can like line people up or whatnot. But I will say this Mexican Heritage jersey and the Puerto Rican jersey that they have coming up are both absolute fire. And I feel like the Cubs nailed the assignment for those. So generally, though, I will confess that I am a Los White Sox soccer jersey sucker. I am always at a White Sox game during the Los White Sox giveaway. So,
yes. So, getting back into the Cubs with the off season, did the Cubs do right by you? Was there room for improvement? What happened there?
Well, I mean, the offense was taken care of like whoa. The Kyle Tucker move is a great move. Like I said earlier, transforms the lineup. There's a reason that the Cubs are at or near the top of almost every offensive category in baseball. The thing they did not do is add starting pitching, which is kind of mystifying. And we're seeing the results of that now. They've lost Justin Steele for the year. Shota Imanaga is on the IL with a very mild hamstring issue. They think he'll be back after the minimum amount of time he was out on the field working out earlier this homestand. So we have seen him and he is throwing and doing stuff and looks fine. But it is sort of wild to watch a Cubs game these days because the offense, and they did it last night, right? Like they can be down a couple of runs, come back in the ninth and walk it off pretty easily against just about anybody. They have put up 6+ runs, 10+ runs on multiple occasions this season. I was at the crazy Diamondbacks Cubs Friday game where the Cubs were up 7-2 and then the Diamondbacks were up like 11-7 and then the Cubs were up 13-11 or whatever it wound up being. It was just nuts. It was like there were 21 runs scored in an inning and a half. Like just classic Wrigley. The offense is fire. The starting pitching is questionable at best. We are getting like Matthew Boyd and Colin Ray are both pitching like aces at the moment, which is the reason the Cubs are in first place. Neither of those dudes is supposed to be an ace. So when this turns into a pumpkin later, we should all be very expectant of it. I am a little mystified as to why they are not making a big move for like a Pablo Lopez or a Sandy Alcantara or something. Sandy's struggled this year, so I do sort of understand why they haven't been quick to pull the trigger there. But they really need to go take some of those corner outfield prospects, Owen Casey, Kevin Alcantara, who are blocked in their system by the likes of Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki and Kyle Tucker, and turn them into a starting pitcher, preferably one that will be in the system for a couple of years, preferably one that's got a contract that is cost controlled so that they can give Kyle Tucker all the money in the offseason. I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't know if that deal is going to come together. I think the Yankees also want to do that deal, so the Cubs are going to have some company there. It'll be really interesting to see what they wind up doing.
There's even Tristan McKenzie, who obviously was injured and has had a very rough time back, but was, recently dropped and is just kind of, I feel like, floating in the ether, where the kid has so much potential that it's insane. And I was kind of hoping the White Sox would consider it, especially, going after like a division rival. But yeah, frustrating. I want to see Tristan McKenzie playing baseball.
Yeah, I like Tristan McKenzie a lot. He's a super interesting arm. The Guardians do a good job with pitching development, and the Cubs pitch lab has had some success in terms of resurrecting some guys. The other thing with them, in addition to not shoring up the starting pitching ranks, which they were clearly like right on the cusp of short one pitcher there, the bullpen is just an adventure for the ages. It's at any point in time, one of the guys in the bullpen can absolutely blow up and the game can be out of reach in an instant. I mentioned that I was at the very fun Cubs Diamondbacks Friday game. I was also at the San Francisco Giants Cubs game that was 5-5 heading into the 11th inning before Ryan Presley, who is ostensibly the team's closer, but now pitching in like the 6th inning in low leverage situations, gave up 8 runs without an out. Yeah. So that's one of the worst pitching performances I have ever seen in my life. He has since had a couple of low leverage, much better performances, but that's nerve-wracking. And then, Porter Hodge, then you would think becomes the closer. He immediately comes in a non-save situation against the Mets and blows it. So, I I'm kind of, this bullpen is not lights out.
Yeah.
To say the least. Yesterday, the runs late were given up by Julian Merriweather, who's supposed to be part of the lockdown, good bullpen. Everybody who is supposed to be good in the bullpen has at some point in time given up runs. Sometimes to very good teams like the Mets or the Giants, sometimes to not very good teams like the Marlins. So, it's an adventure out there on the pitching front.
So I wanted to take a quick detour to Kyle Hendricks, because he is no longer Cub. So you've lost the professor, but he's also ancient in baseball years. And he did just have a really good start with the Angels. But aside from all of that, do you think the Cubs will retire his number? Because he has had such a long career and did win a World Series with them.
So I think the whole 2016 team poses a little bit of a dilemma for the Cubs, because the only numbers that they have retired are Hall of Fame numbers, and they have not even retired all of those. I think that, for example, Andre Dawson gets his number 8 retired before any of the 2016 Cubs would be on the retirement list, to my mind. Now, part of that is because Jed Hoyer just does not have a heart and didn't keep any of those guys around. I'm serious. Like, if he keeps Anthony Rizzo on the team and Anthony Rizzo retires a Cub, the number 44 probably gets retired at some point in the future, whether he makes it to the Hall of Fame or not. But because he didn't do that, there's just nobody in that group. And I'm this pains me. I've got the Wilson Contreras, Javi Baez shrine back here. Neither one of those dudes is going to be retired by my favorite team, despite being such maybe the most fun duo I've ever seen in Cubs uniforms in my lifetime. They just did stuff routinely, both the Contreras throwing a guy out, Javi magic tag, and if both of them were on the base paths at the same time, chaos would ensue. That, like the Javi play where against the Pirates, where he runs back home and then winds up on second somehow and Wilson scores. They did the double steal thing multiple times against teams. There was a game where the booth was talking about the fact that they had double stolen home and second 2 weeks earlier, and then they did it, and the team obviously knew it was coming and it didn't matter. So none of those guys are in the retire the number conversation. Kyle would have been close, but I think that's that's something the Cubs have reserved at this moment in time, at least for guys who are in the Hall of Fame and played for the Cubs for a very long time. And they have a number of older dudes who would need to be accounted for, retired, something prior to that. I do think that if they wanted to retire Andre Dawson's 8, that would be totally acceptable. Honestly, the number that I want them to retire, Buck O'Neill's number. And I think it's 53, 52. Hold on. I always mess this up.
You're right.
But, Buck O'Neill is the reason they had Ernie Banks. He's the reason that they had Fergie Jenkins. He's the reason they had Lou Brock before they traded him to the Cardinals, the reason they had Billy Williams. That's a number that I think they should retire. And I think they've got one statue sitting, it's 53. They've got one statue sitting out there, statue-like base that has not been used yet, now that they've unveiled the Ryan Sandberg statue. And if anybody is listening in Cubslandia, I have also dropped this nugget into the ear of the sculptor himself, Lou Sella, who I got to meet at Cubs Convention a couple years ago. It should be Buck O'Neill. The man is the reason half of those other statues exist. And the Cubs should be very proud that they had him as one of their coaches for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm almost surprised that hasn't happened yet, but who knows? We got time.
Get it done.
So we'll go back to, present day Cubs. Since they have been really hot, how are you feeling heading into the rest of this season? I mean, clearly they're leading this division and by a pretty decent margin. Do you think that's sustainable?
Well, so a couple of things about that. They have a 1-game lead over the Cardinals in the loss column. They have a 2-game lead over the Cardinals in the win column. I think the NL Central has a bunch of flawed teams. Like, I think the Cardinal, like, I'm over here concerned about the Cubs pitching. The Cardinals pitching is way worse.
Yeah.
I don't even know what this rotation is. I'm not sure if Nolan Arenado's like going to come back and be Nolan Arenado or not. Wilson Contreras looks pretty good. They have some young bats that look pretty good, but that does not look like a playoff caliber team. To me, the Brewers are really struggling to find people to fill that sort of third base situation. And they've had some injuries in the outfield that have made that questionable too. William Contreras not quite off to the William Contreras start that he was off to last year. So their offense looks a little bit weak to me. They've also had pitching issues, although they're going to get like Brandon Woodruff back. So no tears for the Brewers and their pitching situation. And then the Pirates and Reds are just like, they're flawed in different ways. The Reds are interesting. They have a lot of great young hitters. Tito's a great manager. They play in a bandbox and they don't have the pitching to play in a bandbox. And then the Pirates have just decided that it doesn't matter that they have historically good pitching. They're not going to put any hitters around them, which I don't know why you're firing Derek Shelton for that. That seems like a front office problem, but that's just me. So part of me thinks that, the NL Central is right there for the taking. Jed Hoyer is in a contract year, and a lot of what the Cubs are doing right now seems aimed at saving Jed Hoyer's job and getting them to the playoffs. I don't think that a wild card is coming out of the Central, though, because it's just not a very strong division relative to the other two divisions, right? Like, the East is stacked with the Mets, Phillies, and Braves. The Braves haven't even gotten Ronald Acuna back yet, and they had Spencer Strider for like a game, and then he'll come back too. Then you've got the West with the Dodgers, Giants, Diamondbacks, and Padres. Sorry, Rockies, you're just not in the same tier.
Yeah,
the Rockies are in like the Marlins tier. But so the NL Central is not getting a wild card, which means you have to win the division or you're not going to go to the playoffs. I do think they're in the best position to win the division. I also think they need a starting pitcher, and the bullpen is a joke. Should fix that.
It's funny that you mentioned the Marlins. So the last 2 seasons now, Al has reached out to have me give a little White Sox blurb for his previews for this Crosstown series. And I did put, I don't want to like spoil all of it. I'm going to pull it up really quick because I thought it was funny because I make jokes. I started this off with, will the White Sox be good this season? No. Will it at least be better than 2024? This is where I tell myself the Rockies, at the time I write this, are 7-34. What I mean by this is that it can always be worse, but I think the White Sox should be a little bit better than poor Colorado. So I feel for them. I do. And I feel for Chris Bryant because he's just been so plagued with injuries, and he kind of just went to Colorado to die.
Yeah, I love Chris Bryant. I am forever grateful for the World Series memories and all the great work that he did here. Part of me thinks that Chris Bryant is just fine. And I don't mean that in like everything's, happy-go-lucky when he's on a team that's won 7 games in 2 months, because that sucks. But he was kind of one of those kids that was famous before he was even drafted, and everybody expected everything out of him. And he did the things, like he was the college player of the year and the rookie of the year and the MVP, and he won a World Series. And by all accounts, the dude likes to watch Disney movies with his wife, and they have a bunch of kids. And I think he kind of moved to Colorado to get out of the spotlight and have people stop asking him about injuries and whether he was going to play today and all this stuff. And he got there. Now, the fact that the Rockies did that deal is an indictment of the Rockies system. You know what I mean? And I wish nothing but the best for Chris Bryant, but it just sort of seems like he's just not going to be one of those guys again. It's funny, actually. The guy who is having a moment right now and who I kind of always knew would when he got the shot to be a star again is Javier Baez.
Yeah.
And that is because Javi loves a show.
Yeah.
And Javi in Detroit for the first couple of years of that deal was the worst possible situation. Last place team, no crowd, no showmanship, bad whiffs at sliders, injuries, right? But now Javi's healthy. He had offseason hip surgery. He's playing center field. He's out there making catches nobody should make in center field. He's got Jason Benetti calling his games, and I know that's probably a sore spot for White Sox fans. But like the Jason Benetti Javi Baez combo is so good. I watch it just to watch those two. The walk-off call yesterday was incredible. Javi has a 2 home run game, including the walk-off, and you got Jason Benetti in the booth like, Javier Baez, you are unstoppable, and it's perfect. It's just that Tigers team is really fun. Mm-hmm. And I sort of always had this hunch that Javi with a crowd and a show to put on would rejuvenate himself. And here he is hitting 300 on pace for 20 home runs and showing off in center field because that's what Javi does.
Yeah, my mother-in-law will watch Tigers games still just to hear Jason because she isn't a big fan of John Schriffen and was incredibly angry when they let go of Jason Benetti. So she, for Mother's Day last year, my husband just got her MLB TV so that she could still listen to Jason.
I mean, as she should be. Yeah. I can't, that was a wild decision. My mother is a huge Javier Baez fan, and so I told her that Javi was playing really well again and playing center field. Now she'll text me when the Tigers games are out. She's like, Javi hit a homer. I'm like, okay, Mom, thanks.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we can kind of get into what this series might look like. All right, welcome back. We're going to get into the series with the Cubs. So we were trying to pin down some starting pitchers. We might have them, but I know you will see in the series Shane Smith, who has been lights out, Sean Burke, who has also been very good, and Jonathan Cannon, who did just play last night and was phenomenal. So I know you are kind of doubting Cubs starting pitching right now, but what can you tell me about what to expect for this season, for this series, I mean?
Yeah, so it looks like Cade Horton is going to pitch on Friday. There's a question as to whether Cade Horton will start that game or whether he will have an opener in front of him. With the Mets, they had Brad Keller open for him, and then Cade Horton threw 4 innings. He is the Cubs' best starting pitching prospect. He struck out 5, didn't walk anybody against the Mets. Honestly, he got teed up for a home run, or else that would have been a pretty exceptional debut by all accounts. The slider is filthy. If you remember in the 2022 draft watchers said that there were 7 guys who should go with the top 7 picks, and the Cubs had like the 7th pick. The Mets, maybe not the Mets, might have been the Rangers. Anyway, one team audibled on Kumar Rocker. I cannot remember if it was the first year Kumar Rocker cracked the top 7 or the second year he did. So it might have been the Rangers. And then the Cubs audibled on Cade Horton. And the reason the Cubs audibled on Cade Horton is because he had been pitching in the College World Series, and the slider that he was throwing in the College World Series was a major league ready slider. So they took a shot on a guy who had just come back from Tommy John surgery but had a major league ready slider. The slider is filthy. The fastball is not quite there. The walks have been higher in AAA than people would like, although, like I said, he didn't walk anybody against the Mets, so that was really nice to see. It'll be interesting to see what he does at Wrigley Field on a Friday afternoon against the White Sox. I'm going to try to get a ticket. It's supposed to be like 85 degrees, so I'm sure that those tickets are going to be absurdly expensive, but we're going to see. We'll see if I can get myself a single in the bleachers for Friday afternoon just to see Cade Horton's debut at Wrigley. And then, after Cade Horton on Friday, you've got Matthew Boyd, who has been outstanding. And I didn't have any doubts about Matthew Boyd's ability to pitch. I have doubts about Matthew Boyd's ability to stay healthy. But at the moment, he's got a 2.78 ERA. He's been pitching like an ace. So that's a big reason the Cubs are where they are in the standings. And then you've got Colin Ray, who, look, he doesn't go more than 5 innings. The Cubs are never going to let him see a lineup third time through. I shouldn't say never, because if his pitch count were low enough and things were looking pretty good, they might, but they just haven't had the opportunity. Yet he was really supposed to be kind of the swingman out of the bullpen, and then injuries to Justin Steele, Javier Assad, and Shota have sort of thrust Colin Ray into like the third, fourth starter role, which is bonkers. But he's throwing really well, and he's done it against great teams. He's done it against teams that have struggled. My thing with the Crosstown Classic, I don't know how you feel about it. I feel like stats and like previous records and everything don't matter for it. It's just a chaos generating series, and it's always a chaos generating series.
It's vibes. I try to avoid them because the crowds are always going to be insane. No, I fully agree. I feel like anything that we can say kind of goes out the window when that happens, which is kind of the fun of it, but at the same time, the reason why I try to steer clear of that series.
Yeah, totally. 100% the same. It's, if that's what you want, and I think there are people in Chicago who like the only games they go to all year are the Crosstown Classic games. It is the opposite of what I want. The last time I was at a Crosstown game, and like I said, I might go Friday just because it's Cade Horton's debut, and I'm a sucker for a debut. I consider myself very grateful that Past Me was so into Mexican heritage jersey night that I already had a ticket for Moises Ballesteros' surprise debut yesterday, because I would have died if I had missed Moises Ballesteros' debut. But the last time I was at a Crosstown Classic, right after the 7th inning stretch, there were some people behind me. I have no idea if they were Cubs or White Sox fans. So this is just an indictment on both fan bases, the casual fans that show up at these games. But I heard people behind me like, yeah, it's the 7th inning. There hasn't even been a fight yet. And I was like, dear God, who comes to baseball games for fights? Like, this is in the grandstand. This isn't even in the bleachers. I'm like, come on, people. And there's always a fight, right? Like there's always, you see it. Like you see it in the grandstand, you see it in the bleachers. It's ridiculous. I'm not into it.
Yeah, it's
like how a baseball game keep score and be boring.
Right. It's kind of the frat boy special, because that's kind of where that beer snake trend began, which I could live without for the rest of my life. And yeah, you're right. That's where the fights, like it's a hectic time to be in any kind of outfield seats, because it is just kind of the casual frat boy. No offense, but the ones that are like the Cubbies. I'm like, you're not allowed to say that, actually.
The beer snake thing is the worst. Like I have had people so I sit in an area of the bleachers where the cup snakes just don't really happen. But at times when I've been hanging out with other friends, I have had people be like, oh, will you hold this? I'm like, absolutely not. You think I'm going to hold your dirty, dripping beer cups for multiple innings so that you can try to like get a cup snake from the lower level part of center field to no, I'm not. Like, go find another sucker. This is a terrible idea.
I have a great excuse. I can't have any gluten. So I'm like, you know what? If I touch your nasty beer stained cup, I could get very sick. Leave me alone.
I also just don't give them my cups either. They're like, we have your cups. I'm like, no. Go get someone else's trash.
Don't feed the snake, please.
Don't feed the snake. Don't feed it.
The biggest threat to this White Sox team right now, which player do you think fits that mold?
In terms of like who's going to do damage?
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I can get a statistically valid answer to this as opposed to just ripping off the top of my head. So if we go back a handful of weeks, the best hitter on the Cubs has been Pete Crow Armstrong, at least in terms of active hitters, with a WRC plus of 158. Ian Happ actually also had a WRC plus of 158 during that time, but he is hurt. He is on the 10-day injured list with an oblique strain. So that is part of why Moises Ballesteros is here. And I am already prepared for Moises Ballesteros to be my favorite Cub going forward. So I'm begging Jed Hoyer not to trade him because he trades all of my favorite Cubs. Next up would be Dansby Swanson with a WRC plus of 155. Dansby has been incredible in the last 3-ish weeks, hitting 303, 367, 539 with 5 home runs. He got off to a real slow start to the season. And so his season long stats don't look great, but he's on a little bit of a burner right now. So I would say Pete Crow Armstrong and Dansby are probably the 2 biggest threats in the lineup. But honestly, the thing about this Cubs offense, and part of the reason I've been talking about them so much during this podcast, there's 7 guys with a WRC plus over 100, and 2 of them are the catchers, so they're not playing every day. But that just gives you an idea of how much this lineup can hurt you up and down the lineup.
I did see someone on Blue Sky mention Mallory Swanson's husband was doing a good job. So I had to go after that and look to see what he was doing. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he's having a good season so far.
Yeah, he's been pretty good. They just announced that they're going to have a kid, which was pretty cute.
I missed that. That's sweet.
Yeah, it just happened last week. It was super cute.
Oh.
I believe that the Cubs have also announced a bobblehead that is a Mallory Swanson, Dansby Swanson joint venture. And that might be a day I actually need to show up for because she's great, man. She's probably the best athlete in their house, which I love.
I do love that was the other thing with the Bears now that Simone Biles' husband is on the Bears. I'm just like, well, you're the second best athlete in that house now. Sorry, Simone will always win that argument.
Yeah, you are Simone Biles' husband.
Yeah. I don't know.
We know you as.
I only know you as her husband.
Well, that's like when Zach Ertz and Julie Ertz were like that whole thing. It's like, you are Julie Ertz's husband. Yeah. She is a better athlete than you. No offense, Zach.
Oh, man. So following with that, what are the keys for the Cubs to take the series? And I know that's kind of a silly question at this point because the White Sox are bad and the Cubs are good, but we now have the Pope on our side, so the White Sox are suddenly winning games again.
Okay, before I answer that question, I would just like to say, so the Cubs Pope rumors started on ABC News, which I know because I was tracking this. I was like, my initial question was, is the Pope a Cubs or a White Sox fan? Mm-hmm. And then people started sending me news clips from ABC that were like, oh, the Pope's a Cubs fan. And so I trusted that, and a whole bunch of other people did too, and ran with it. And then the Pope's brother is like, he's a White Sox fan. And listen, no shade. There's obviously photographic evidence of this. I'm just glad the Pope likes baseball. Yeah. I can get behind a Pope that likes baseball. I think that's got a whole sensibility. The Pope was at the 2005 World Series, and we have video evidence of it. It's great. So this is one of those times where I think all baseball fans unite behind having a baseball-loving Pope. But I do want to say, whoever broke that at ABC News without confirmation, we need to look into that because that is serious news that they got very wrong, and the city of Chicago will not stand for these types of mistakes.
They need their source card revoked permanently.
Absolutely. I feel like somebody was just ripping off the top of their head and did not understand the cataclysm that they had just entered into.
It goes back to that whole joke about how like people forget the White Sox exist and that they did win a World Series. Like that's always been the like little brother syndrome of, oh, that's right, Chicago does have another baseball team. Whoopsie. So I think it just fed into that energy. So now like, I mean, Chicago can already be incredibly insufferable, and we've seen that with this new Pope. You throw that onto the White Sox fan base, who has been miserable for a few seasons now. And I'm just like, oh, this is just going to be a hot mess. We're never going to like let this one die down.
Never. I was like, some New York person was like, oh yeah, Chicago's going to be insufferable for the next 36 hours. I was like, we celebrate St. Patrick's Day for a month. You think this is going to last 36 hours? It's going to be the rest of my life, man. For the rest of my life, we are always going to be the first American Pope. Like, it's going to be a whole thing. The shirts are great. Yeah. Shout out to my friend Joe over at Obvious Shirts, who has like a whole line of both White Sox and Cubs and just Bears, like all Chicago sports branded Pope shirts, but also the ones that you all have, like the batter guy as one of your alternate logos. That's a great logo, by the way, but they turned it into a Pope with it's so good. I want one of those like Pope batter guy shirts. I'm not even a White Sox fan, but I feel like I need that as a Chicagoan. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to come down to pitching, and if y'all can get to either our starting pitching or our bullpen, that's it. But the nice thing about the Cubs having the offensive heft that they do, and I mean, I see the numbers your pitchers are throwing up. I'm sure there are some good teams that they have been good against. This Cubs team can hit. Mm-hmm. They take walks, they hit for average, and they hit for power. And you can find yourself in the middle of a crooked inning number lightning fast with this team. So it should be a fun series.
Absolutely. So on the other side of that, and maybe this is just the White Sox really taking advantage of pitching, be it starters or the bullpen. What kind of fears do you have heading into it?
Only the chaos. I mean, I don't think that the Cubs are gonna. I don't think anything's gonna happen in this series. Knock on wood, barring injury, that's gonna change anything for either team's fortunes during the course of the whole series. But I do think that this. I always see like the Marlins, White Sox, Marlins stretch after the Cubs have had the hardest schedule in baseball and played it to the tune of like a 7 games over 500 record. That feels like a trap. Right? Like, it's like, oh man, this is one of those times where you can really just like lose some of your mojo against some bad teams. So I was really glad they came back last night, taking at least 2 of 3 from the Marlins, and hopefully they'll do the same with the White Sox. But like I said, these games are chaos.
Yeah, always. So moving away from our teams, obviously, just kind of going into this new season, this is kind of just where I love to ask for your hot takes or just kind of what you're feeling with the 28 other teams in Major League Baseball.
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. I think the Braves are going to get better as soon as they come to full strength. I think that they've kind of underperformed. I'm super stunned the Orioles didn't go after more pitching this offseason. It's sort of wild to watch that Orioles team in the middle of one of its like core years with their position players crater and be at the bottom of the American League East. I think they've only won like 2 games more than the White Sox have, which is not what I expected from the Orioles. I will say that the White Sox at 6-6 so far in the month of May. This might be the best month the White Sox have had in, my goodness, multiple seasons. We'll see if they can keep that up. I'm curious if the Rockies are truly a historically bad team because they look like it right now. I think the White Sox had won more than 7 games as of the middle of May last season. So that is what's going on with the Rockies is out of control. I do think that the worries about the Dodgers being a super team were much overblown. And I don't say that because I'm like, oh, the Dodgers aren't good. They have $1 billion deferred into the future. Like, they are obviously very good. But baseball is such a random number generator sport, and no one player or even 5 players or 6 players can really crack that code. If your guys are struggling, you're not winning. If your pitchers are hurt, you're not winning. And the Dodgers, they don't look like the unbeatable juggernaut everybody was worried they would be. And that is because baseball will always baseball. Baseball is baseball can overcome any team configuration to my eyes.
And I mean, they have teams really right on their heels. I mean, the Giants and the Padres especially are not going to let up on them. They don't want them to be the best team in California. I don't want them to be the best team in California.
No, I'm definitely a Padres girl. I'm kind of like, so I am not a Padres fan, but the Padres have been my adopted NL West late night team for the last few seasons. And for whatever reason, the Padres are always on like when the national media decides to go after a guy, it's always like Manny Machado or Fernando Tatis or whatever. And I will not stand for that, like under any circumstances. I'm like, I am defending everyone, breaking the unwritten rules all of the time. That is my job in life. So I've sort of become like a shadow Padres fan, if that makes sense. No. But yeah, those are some of the things I see going on in baseball landia. I mean, I do think that if Javier Baez keeps this up, and admittedly a month and a half of good baseball is not going to make up for what we've seen from Javi for the last couple of seasons, but it seems like he'd be a shoo-in for comeback player of the year, and I'm very here for that.
Right. It's funny you said that about the Padres because now that Dylan Cease is there, I have kind of also been like like lurking in the shadows of watching them play. And despite me still being very bitter about the Manny Machado not going to the White Sox thing, I still like to watch him play. I actually made a cake for my husband. This was, I can't even remember what year it was that rumor was coming about. But I made a birthday cake and it was like this like churro flavored cake, and I made like the White Sox logo, and it was like outlined in this like bright green for the grass, and it said "and Manny Moore" on the side of it. And then like I feel like 2 days later they were like, "Just kidding, he's not coming here." And I was like, just throw the cake or something. I was just, oh.
Yeah, I remember that whole thing. The thing with the Padres is they sort of feel like the anti-Dodgers because the Padres are one of the smallest media markets in baseball. They might be the smallest. I can't remember if San Diego or Milwaukee is the smallest, but one of them is. And they're like, we don't care. We're just spending all the money. They have like multiple $300 million players and Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts. They did an extension for Yu Darvish, and who knows what 42-year-old Yu Darvish is going to be, but maybe he'll be a closer. I don't know, man. It should be fine. The Padres are like, we don't care. We would like to win a World Series, and we're going to do everything we can to do it. And they have a bunch of fun players to try to do that with. They sort of remind me a little bit of the Phillies. In that regard, it's like when everybody else was like, I don't know if these contracts are a good idea. They're like, we will add the extra year and the extra $25 million and worry about it in 2030, which is not a real year.
Yeah. I will say, however, I have always been more in the Giants camp just because I was a very insufferable Tim Lincecum girly back in the day. So they've kind of always been my California team personally. And I love Oracle Park, but I also have not been able to go down to San Diego yet. I hear that one is one of the best, but yeah, both teams, I will still kind of watch both teams and lurk in the shadows of their success.
Yeah, so Oracle Park is a weird one for me because I have been there, but I was there on a tour in the off season as a work group thing that we did. And so I have been to Oracle Park. I can see how beautiful it is. I've never seen a game there. So I don't think that truly counts as having been at a park, but it like half counts. I feel like I can comment on the sight lines and the, what the park feels like inside and all of that type of stuff, but I can't actually comment on the baseball experience or the food or anything like that.
It was nice. So the food was really good because, again, I mentioned earlier I can't have any gluten, and they had delicious gluten-free pizza. Like, it was one of the parks that kind of really knocks it out.
Nice.
For that kind of subset of food. And then the views are just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous when you get the bay. I, however, always run hot, and I was not putting the 2 and 2 together that our seats were kind of up high because I did want to still see the bay and the field. I didn't put into account that San Francisco gets cold,
really
especially
cold
on the bay. And I was sitting there in like a t-shirt and shorts, and I'm like, I need to go buy a sweatshirt. I am freezing, and this is a night game. I will probably die in the stands.
It is a really I have that experience every time I go to the Bay. I'm like, why is it so cold here? I'm in California. And then it's like, because you're not in Southern California.
You're up north. It's a lot cooler here, but oh man. So that's what I have for you.
Awesome.
So obviously, thank you as always for coming on. I hope that you can get out Friday and see your boys. I will be avoiding it like the plague as usual. But yeah, best of luck in this kind of chaotic series.
Yeah, we'll see. It's sort of dependent on me finding a bleacher ticket that doesn't cost an arm and a leg and ensuring that I can sit with my people and hopefully outside of the zone of fights and whatnot.
You gotta deal with those summer Fridays people too. Because, we talk about once that weather hits like a certain temperature, it's like it's quit your job on a Friday afternoon weather.
Yep. And that's going to be this Friday, I believe. So it's going to be, this has all, I can't tell if it's a good idea or a bad idea, but it's Kate Horton's debut. So decisions.
Who knows? All right. Well, anyway, best of luck. Thank you.
Yeah, this was great, Crystal. Always good to talk Cubs and Sox with you. And yeah, go Chicago. Go Chicago Pope.
Go Chicago Pope Leo. Thank you. All right. Well, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.